NFL roster rankings are out. The Rams are in the top 5. Who finished ahead of them? That's next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking us out on Locked On Rams. I'm also the host of the Rams pre- and post-game show on their flagship station, ESPN 710, and the host of Travis and Sliwa on the very same station, 10A to 1P, every single weekday. So, all right, little summer vacation for me the last few days. Thanks for hanging in there. We will be back and at this very steady moving forward from this point. Want to talk a little bit about what some of the Rams have been up to on their summer vacation. That's in just a little bit. Plus, we'll talk about Sean McVay and one of the things that makes him one of the best coaches in the NFL. That is coming up in just a little bit. But let's start right here. Let's start with some roster rankings that have come out of late. This was a few days ago, but I think it's a really interesting reflection on where the Rams are with regards to their team, to their position in the NFL, and to the future of what they have available to them, not just this year, but over the next couple of years and over the last few years as well. So ESPN had their rankings of the current rosters in the NFL, and the Rams did very, very well, not surprisingly, right? They finished 4th. The Rams have the 4th best roster in the NFL, according to ESPN. Just off the top of your head, when you hear that, you're like, yeah, that probably sounds about right. They're right near the top. Maybe they're not at the very top, but they're not much further beyond that. And you start thinking about all the reasons why. And the coach isn't a part of this, but I want to talk about why maybe he should be in just a minute. But let's just focus on the players right now. Let's stay on the offensive side. You have an elite quarterback in Matthew Stafford. That's going to put you in very rarefied air right off the jump, right? If you have a quarterback like that that can do the things that we saw him do last season, your roster is going to be pretty well regarded. You have, for my money, the best wide receiver in the NFL in Cooper Kupp. Okay, so that's a great jumping off point, a triple crown like we've talked about. You've added Allen Robinson, who's another very, very good wide receiver. Now, hasn't played on this team, but the expectations are probably to be very, very good, if not even maybe a little bit better than that. I don't think that anybody's expecting him to come in and not make much of an impact, so that's very good news. And then you have an offensive line that has, some question marks about it. I think this is one of the places where the Rams are probably going to get dinged a little bit along the way. You've got a very good tight end in Tyler Higbee, and you've got a committee of running backs that can get the job done. Okay, so that's on the offensive side. On the defensive side, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. We done? I mean, that's how good those guys are, right? Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey in and amongst themselves are going to give your defensive roster an incredible boost, just considering who they are and what they do in the positions they play. Think there's 4 positions in the NFL that matter, right? Generally, you need the quarterback, you need somebody to protect the quarterback, you need someone to go get the quarterback, and you need someone to prevent the quarterback from completing passes. The Rams have all 4 of those things, other than the left tackle right now, who Andrew Whitworth is gone. So I think they take a little bit of a backseat in that. So I think that 4 sounds about right. And 2 of the 3 teams that are ahead of them, I think, is fair, right? The number 1 roster in the NFL, according to ESPN, are the Buffalo Bills. Sure. Buffalo Bills have a really, really good team. They have a quarterback that is outstanding. They have wide receivers that are very, very good. They have a defense that is getting better and better, that added Von Miller, and they have talent all over the field the way that the Rams do. So I don't really look at that and say, well, why are they in there? Well, they're in there because they have a bunch of good players, and that's why it's so exciting, the opening game that we're going to get here in just a couple of months, believe it or not, between the Bills and the Rams. It's 2 of the 4 or 5 best teams in the whole league going at it, the defending champs against a team that probably felt like they should have been in the Super Bowl last year, if not for a little bit of bad luck, the overtime rules being what they are. The second-ranked team on this list, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah. I mean, you look at what they have offensively in particular. That is a roster filled with really, really good offensive players. That's a roster that's been very, very good defensively as well. Now, maybe they don't have a guy like Aaron Donald or a guy like Jalen Ramsey, but it's a roster that is deep on both sides of the ball. You've got Tom Brady, so that goes without saying. You've got Mike Evans. You got Chris Godwin. You got really good players on both sides of the ball. So that's cool too. The third one is the one that I think is the most interesting because just on a roster standpoint, and that's what this is, but this is where I wanted to bring the coach back in a little bit. The Los Angeles Chargers, I still think of them as the San Diego Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers have the third best roster in the NFL, according to ESPN.com. It may be the third best roster. It may be a team that's got Justin Herbert at quarterback, Keenan Allen at wide receiver. They added Khalil Mack. You've got Bosa. You've got Derwin James. You've got really good players up and down that roster. But here's the thing, that the roster, I know that they got Mack, and I know that they've made some other moves along the way, but the roster is not something that just creates itself. The roster, you can run out a roster of really good players. What do? And the Chargers have done, well, not much. They're not bad, but are they good? The Chargers were the weirdest team in football last year, arguably. The Chargers felt like a team that should have been in the playoffs. Not only should have been in the playoffs, but could have made some noise. They got an elite quarterback. They got a wide receiver. They got somebody who can go get the quarterback. They got somebody that can make plays on you. You've added Khalil Mack, and they didn't do anything. I know the Mack thing came after the fact, but the point is, this is a team that I feel, and this is a guy that came out of the Rams, tree. This is a piece of fruit off the Sean McVay tree. This is not a team that is loaded with expectations, or maybe it's loaded with talent. The Chargers are one of those teams. I'm going to have to see it. You're going to have to show me. You're going to have to show me that you figured some things out. Not that you just have great players, because you've had great players. How's that worked out? Not great. Rams 4, I can live with. Chargers ahead of the Rams, that doesn't feel quite right. Okay, so what makes Sean McVay so special? Matchups. That's coming up next. But first, let's talk about Built Bar. So you've heard me talk about how coconut almond is my favorite. You heard me talk about how mud pie was really good, how my kids went absolutely crazy for the brownie ones. Well, how about this? Let's put all of this together. Coconut brownie chunk puff. That's right. The flavors that you love in a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. And it's got all the stuff that we've all talked about before, right? It's high in protein. It's low in sugar. It's a good choice that tastes great. That's how you do it. You can enjoy them guilt-free because they're actually good for you. The perfect treat whenever you've got that craving. Delicious coconut, rich sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing. Go to Built.com right now to order your box of coconut brownie chunk built puffs. Let me say that again. Coconut brownie chunk built puffs. Order right now. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Use that promo code LOCKED15. All right, so we have spent a lot of time on this pod talking about how good of a coach Sean McVay is. I mean, that goes without saying, right? That Sean McVay is not just a great coach, but Sean McVay is somebody that has done an unbelievable job at creating opportunities for his players, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about putting people in a position to succeed. That's what a coach is all about, right? You can talk about motivation, which is important. You can talk about building culture, which is incredibly important. But ultimately, at the end of the day, and this is where you're going to get your credibility from your players too. At the end of the day, am I putting my guys in a position where their skills are best utilized and where they are in a position to succeed? Or am I putting them in a position to fail? Like you've heard me say this before, I've worked with a lot of NFL players in a lot of different capacities. And one of the things that a former co-host of mine, Eric Davis, played for the 49ers, played for the Panthers for a while, that he said this, and it always makes that they would see stuff on a board and they would see stuff in practice. They would see stuff in a meeting and they'd go, well, that's not going to work. Go, no, it's going to work. And it's not. We're out there. We know what is and what isn't going to work. We'll go do what you want, but I'm telling you right now, that's probably not going to come the way that you want it. And they're right. Players can sniff this stuff out. Players know if you know what you're asking them to do is going to work or not. They know intrinsically, they just have an understanding of what is and isn't successful. Sean McVay is successful. Sean McVay puts his players in a position to succeed. Pro Football Focus has some numbers out there talking about how Sean McVay has been particularly adept at getting his guys matched up, his offensive players, his wide receivers in particular, matched up against linebackers. Number one on the list is Cooper Kupp. Robert Woods was just a few names after that. These are guys that make a ton of catches, get a lot of yards, score touchdowns, and in large part because they're put in favorable matchups. There's not linebackers that are going to cover Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. They're just not. So it sounds easy, right? It sounds, oh, just get a linebacker on your wide receiver and you're going to cook them all day long. Well, sure, but the guys on the other side get paid too. The guys that are designing off their defenses, their whole goal is to prevent these things from happening, right? So how do you do it? Short answer is, I don't know. I'm not an NFL head coach. Sean McVay knows how to do it. He knows how to do it better than everybody else. The point to me of this is not that, oh, let's find more ways to get more wide receivers on linebackers. The point of this is Sean McVay understands the NFL on how to create mismatches. He understands on how to scheme these things better than the average guy. That if this is where the opportunities to exploit the defense are, that's where he's going to go. And the second you take that away from him, he's going to find another way to do it. This is the secret sauce. I remember going to see him speak at a media function right after he'd gotten hired. And he was drawing up on the board this play about where they just wanted to get the linebacker to take one step the wrong way. We need him to go one step to his left, and then we're going to beat him to his right. He doesn't have to run all the way to the right. Just one step. Just get him leaning the other way, and boom, we're going to do him. Showed a couple of videos, and that's exactly what happened, and it was amazing. This is what we're talking about. This is what makes him him, and what makes a lot of the other guys in the NFL less successful. He has great players, obviously. Everybody in the NFL is really good players. What he's able to do is put his players in a position to succeed over and over and over again, to put them in a position where it doesn't matter if it's a linebacker or it doesn't matter if it's a corner, a nickel guy, or a safety. He's going to find that mismatch and exploit it to his advantage. It sounds really easy. Not everybody can do it. Think about this. Think about Jeff Fisher, okay? And I'll use him not because he's an easy target, which he is, but rather he's the one that was here right before Sean McVay. He's the most close reference point that hasn't been McVay. How often did you see a play coming out of a Jeff Fisher-led team? And I know Jeff Fisher was a defensive guy and he had offensive coordinators. Okay, fine, but he's the head coach. He's responsible for all of it. That was, wow, that guy was wide open. How did they get that guy open like that? Or my God, they expect a linebacker to cover that guy? Never, right? Watch some of these other teams. Think about, here's another good example. Who have the Rams had some trouble with over the last few years? San Francisco. What does San Francisco do especially well against the Rams? They find ways to get Debo in mismatch. They line him up as a running back. They line him up as a wide receiver. They'll put him in the slot. They move him all over to find mismatches. And who's a really good play caller? Kyle Shanahan's a really good play caller. How do those things come together? Because he's doing the things that McVay does, and this is the chess game. All of a sudden, George Kittle's killing the Rams. Well, we're going to put Jalen Ramsey on him. Now what? No, now we're going to go to Debo Samuel, and this is the game within the game. And when you see really good teams, when you see Bill Belichick, master of finding mismatches. Tom Brady, a master of finding mismatches. Andy Reid, really, really good at that as well. Sean McVay, maybe better than all of them. And certainly getting better year after year after year. Just an amazing performance last year. There's no reason to think it. No, it might not be that. It may be, let's say it's running backs on linebackers or tight ends on safeties or whatever the matchup du jour may be. He's the one that's going to find it. He's the one that's going to exploit it. And that's why he is who he is. Okay, so it's summer vacation time, right? The Rams, their players, their coaches, they're getting in a few little trips right before it gets serious. That's coming up next. Okay, so I had a few days off last week and a few days off early part of this week, and now I'm getting ready for the summer push and leading up to training camp and leading up to the start of the exhibition season. And then, of course, we get to the good stuff very early in September, and then we got 4 months of just nothing but NFL football. And it's awesome, and I can't wait, and I'm looking forward to it. Apparently, I'm not the only one. A lot of Rams out and about doing things that they do, getting ready. Because, again, while, you and me and everybody else take a little summertime off to go relax and spend time with family and friends and everything else, they're doing the same thing. Here's what's going on the Rams summer vacations. Just a couple of examples of this. How about Greg Gaines on a wakeboard? And by the way, it looked pretty good on a wakeboard, right? That is a very big guy doing some very acrobatic things on a wakeboard. Very impressed that he was able to go out there and do the things that he do. We saw, I know that he's not a member of the team anymore, but we saw Andrew Whitworth going out there playing a little celebrity golf with Jalen Ramsey, doing some things out there on the golf course. By the way, speaking of a big guy doing something that doesn't look quite right, him swinging a golf, you're not supposed to swing a golf club that well when you're 6'7", 320 pounds or whatever. He's checking. He looks like he's leaned out a little bit, so we'll call it 315. You're not supposed to look like that at that big. He's looked really, really good. How about Sean McVay on a hoverboard in the water, looking pretty fit, looking like he's enjoying himself a great deal. But this is how you know NFL football is right around the corner. This is how you know that training camp is coming up before too long, because these are the things that you get in right before you kick. Because once training camp starts, you're not going hoverboarding, right? You're in there with the laser pointer. Look at that. Okay, this guy, you're running the same play over and over and over again at practice, and line it up and do it again, and line it up and do it again. And just the repetition and unbelievable attention to detail that you have in training camp. Well, we're going to get out all the fun stuff. We're going to go and do all of these other things. And again, this is why the Rams were eligible, as are the Bills, to report to camp a little bit earlier than everybody else, because they play that first game. They play about 4 or 5 days ahead of everybody else, so they can start 4 or 5 days ahead of everybody else. The Rams elected not to, and I think that you're going to see a lot of what they do is kind of predicated on that. And this summer vacation stuff that you're seeing, the McVay's out there, the players are out there, they're doing these things. It's one of these, hey, listen, we put in an incredibly long season last year, right? From the time they start in beginning of July, mid-July, when camp opens, to the time they were done in the middle of February, that is a long run to play football, right? And that's what they did. So now they're squeezing all this stuff in. You still got to do mini camps and draft and combines and free agency and all the things that they do. But this little window in here, right here, that's their time to kind of blow off some steam, to kind of do whatever it is that they want to do. And now you got to go back and grind it out all over again. I would not be surprised at all if, as we get through into the season, into training camp, you're going to see some of those vets get a lot of time off. You're going to see the guy, and I already know Matthew Stafford, has not been throwing. We'll see. We'll talk about that coming up on Locked On Rams tomorrow, about Allen Robinson and he being in touch with each other quite a bit, even though Matthew Stafford's not throwing. But you're going to see Sean McVay take a very proactive approach on how he goes about making sure that his guys are healthy, giving them time off to recharge, giving them time off to help their bodies, giving them just between the ears, quite frankly, right? I was off for a few days and come back. You just feel better. Your mind is clear. Your brain moves more quickly when you have some time to get away from the things that you do before you jump right back into them again. And that's what the Rams are doing. Now, golf, wakeboard, hoverboard, maybe a little beach time somewhere, fellas. Just kind of relax a little bit, get the body right, and get ready to go. What it means to me is that football is right around the corner, and it cannot get here fast enough. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rams. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen, the Locked On NFL podcast, our national NFL experts and insiders, keeping fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.